Well, hello everyone. Good night and welcome to the Georgetown Tea House. My name is Marcel, and this evening we have a really good one for you. Do all high exist? Do all high exist? This is a big one. All right, so log on quickly and send this link to your friends and family because they have a story to tell. All right. So we want to welcome you all to the Tea House, another Monday night, and we're so happy that you are here with us each and every Monday night. And I can't help but let you know that our friends, we got lots of friends and family who would be viewing this broadcast long after we would have left here. They come back to the broadcast and they click the link and they watch the entire thing and make comments and they're like giggling and sending me messages and the kind of thing. So we want to thank you for coming on even after we are gone. All right. So thank you so much. And please share this broadcast with your friends and family. All right. It's going to be good. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Examine any profound event in the Bible or in the history of Christianity, and one is sure to recognize the consistently pivotal role of conversational interactions. We see this at play in Genesis, the first book, where through a series of conversations we witness the fall of our species and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. The conversation between God and man, the conversation between man and woman, the conversation between the woman and the devil, and so on. At the Georgetown Tea House, we know the great importance and pivotal role that conversations often play in our lives on this earth. And thus, we will seek to engage in the types of conversations that are insightful, stimulating, and thought-provoking. And yes, occasionally a trifle boring. Our hope is that with each visit to the tea house, we can become better aware of who we are, of our relationship with God, and where we stand with each other and the rest of humankind. And yes, through it all, there will be music. For music, it had been written, is the food of love, and God is love. Join us every Monday evening on Facebook and YouTube Live for conversations at the Georgetown Tea House, a Gospel Side of Me production. Please, do bring along a cup of tea or a glass of your favorite juice.
Okay, we're back. Thank you. I'm seeing some of our friends are logging on. Good night to you guys. Good night, everyone. Let me introduce some special people. You know, these handsome gentlemen, but there's one in particular that's here that I want to give a special welcome to Pastor Dr. Kirk Thomas. Thank you for agreeing to come on. How are things? Talk to us.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's always a delight to be part of this program. And, Marcia, you're a very persuasive host. So, when you call and ask for someone to be on, it's very hard to say no. I'm I'm happy that I can make the sacrifice to be up. It's just after 1 o'clock here, United Kingdom. But yeah, anything for the development of mankind. And I'm very glad to be here with you.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much. I'm delighted that you're here. Tyrone, talk to us. Tyrone, we got Uncle Augie and Cleon. Talk to us, guys.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I think I missed this program for the past 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
God had me somewhere else for the past 2 weeks, so I'm happy to be back, and it's always a pleasure to be here. And let me just say here, I extend condolences to the family and friends of one of the Victoria stalwarts, Sister Una Peters,
Yes.
who I understood passed this morning, and one of the great leaders and great personality in the Victorious Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I pray that
Yes.
God comfort them during this time, with a hope, knowing that she would have fought a good fight,
Mhm.
and she would have run the race, and she would have finished her course. And therefore, they will see her in glory land on that great getting up morning. So, with that said, I'm happy to be back, Marcel and
Yes. Thank you
viewers. Happy
so
to be
much.
back. Yes, I missed the program for the past 2 weeks. I did miss it.
Oh, yes. We missed you too. Uncle Augie, what's going on?
Hi, blessings, blessings, blessings. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure once again to be here. I know we're going to have ourselves a good time as always. Georgetown Tea
Mm-hmm.
House, you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Cleon, let me hear the promo.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Georgetown Tea House, your best and only favorite Monday night show on YouTube, Facebook, and every media platform that we stream on. Don't forget to like, share the link, and subscribe, and tell your best friend that, you know what, the tea is about to spill or the juice, so you need to log on. How are you
Oh,
guys doing today? I am
mm-hmm.
excited that we have the UK in the house. So we have the US online, and we have Guyana, and we have, well, I'm in Jamaica. It's been hot today, but not bad. Um,
Okay.
but I'm excited about what we're discussing today. So
Definitely.
you need to share the link.
Okay. Go on, guys. Share the link because it's going to be hot. I'm about to tell a story, my own personal experience with Ole Higues. So if you don't believe in Ole Higues, they're calling me a liar because I have witnessed it myself. All right. So I want to shout out some people in the chat. Purpose Driven Arundella and Jennifer Allen and Audrey and Karen Wells and my friend Al Ray. Odinga, thank you for joining us. I know you're here for the first time. Thank you so much. My mom, Desiree, my cousin Onika June, Shel Simmons, Karen Kelman, Lindsey Vaughn, my boy. He's always here supporting us. Thank you so much. Guys, share this link because people gonna want to hear this story. All right, we all gonna be telling our stories, either personal stories or stories that we will report. And if you ever was bitten by an old hide, please let me know in the chat. Hi, Shabiki. Thank you so much, my brother Timothy and Randy. Randy Mango is in the house. Randy, I know you got a story for me. Tell me the story. Right? I know the old hide bite you, so tell us. All right, so let's get this ball rolling, guys. It is true. In my From my own experience, I had a little young baby, maybe 3 months old, if so old. Maybe you think he was younger. Just had this lovely baby, and I was told that when you buy shimmies, you gotta buy a blue shimmy. Just if it's a boy or a girl, you have to buy a blue shimmy because that's the shimmy that you're gonna sleep in at night. All right. So I bought my shimmy for my baby boy, and so it was nice. And they said also have to have a bottle of crab oil. So I got my crab oil and I really massaged my baby's skin with it, and all over from head to toe. And we tucked in for the night. I nursed him as he was breastfed only, and I had him all cradled and we went to sleep. When I got up the very next morning, I saw blood on his side of the bed. All right, his side, guys. So now his shimmy is clean, but the bed is bloodied, and the right to the side of his bed because he was close to the window, and right down there by the sill is bloodied. The window still is bloodied, and then when I look out the window because I'm tracing the blood, just below the window is a pool of blood. So I asked my mom, well, of course I called my mom and some, we were trying to figure out, what happened here? Where did it come from? All right. So I tried to get to wash out the shimmy and not the shimmy, but the sheets and stuff, and the blood never came out. So my neighbor, who's an older lady, she said, oh, them buy tea. If it wasn't for the crab oil, they were the stocky, but his blood is too bitter, so they didn't touch him. All right, this is my story. They did not touch my son. because he had crab oil on his skin. All right. I believe that the blood I saw belonged to Ole Higues. Tyrone, you got a sweet story. Who got a sweet story? Who else got a sweet story and a true sweet story?
I'll be listening to the sweet stories tonight. I've never had any personal experience with Oleg and Blood
Okay,
and Son, but I've heard stories. I've heard tremendous stories
right.
from my mother, and we live in an extended family, so grandmother and grandfather. So we heard tremendous stories with Oleg and so on. That person see them in the night, around 6, 7 o'clock in the night,
Uh-huh.
flying through the air and going about their business, and then early next morning and all the rest of it, and they tell you that you have to draw a line, white line with a white chalk and scissors to stop them. And so those are the stories that I've heard. That I never experienced anyone personally.
So you never saw any bite, any red marks on anybody's skin. They never showed you the marks.
No, no, no. I've only heard of it. I've only heard of it. I've only heard of it.
Okay. All right. I mean, let me tell you, let me just add this piece. I did have bite marks, not that from that night, but subsequent nights. I did have bite marks on my leg. All right. True story. All right. Go on. Who is next?
I'm gonna say, like Tyrone, I've never had a personal experience with the outside world, but I've heard of these folklores, and while I'm not going to say that it doesn't exist, I do believe it does exist, but my heart is not conditioned for such existence. So I guess that's the reason why I have not experienced it. But I know, but persons would usually say that I don't know if this is the same thing, which is like the ball of fire that looks like a ball of
Yes,
fire.
yes, yes. It's the same. Yes, yes.
And if it comes, then you have to throw rice on the ground, and they will have to count all the rice. And it was alleged that where I'm from on the East Coast, that they had
Call your village.
persons.
Call your village. Call your village.
Call my village. It is alleged. I'm not going to make any speculations for anybody to come and sue me for defamation of character, even though those people are dead and long gone. That
That's defamation of village.
there were some persons in
Exactly.
Butterfield acting who were a part of such operations. But for me to say that I would have seen it, I know my cousin usually would have had this kind of prickly bush. I don't know what they call it. They call it maca in Jamaica, and it's prevalent in Haiti. When I've been to Haiti, I was like, why is this bush so much? I guess it's just a thing across the Caribbean. And you put that in the window so that they don't get to come in. But I once told my cousin, you're putting that in the window and you're telling us to come in by our backs at night. Suppose not by the time we turn we back, the spirit fly through, we go on our foot or something and get in the house. What are you going to do to get it out? So those are some of the things that I have heard. But
Okay.
I'm not really 100% believing in them.
Okay. Uncle, you know you grew up in the UK, but your mother being Guyanese, I know she tell you stories. I know you had to, see something.
Now, we grew up hearing the stories and we got it from a different perspective. So we got the first hand, which was pretty much used to keep us in line. So if you do this, the all I gonna catch you. And then there were
Okay.
always stories to back it up. And Uncle Freddie would come and he would say yada 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 and give us the stories about what all I would do. So at time my mother decided to tell us what happened with them. So she decided to be fully transparent. And she said that her grandmother called her and her brothers and sisters, a big family. And she says, listen, y'all like making a bunch of noise, y'all go in your bed. If y'all don't rip and go in your bed, look this. Watch the tree over there. And a little bit they watching, they don't see nothing. She said, look at the tree good. You don't see the oleg in there? Look carefully. It's hiding. So everybody's looking till finally They convinced themselves in their mind that they saw it. And she said, you see, ever so often, you're going to see it move because it can't stable itself on the branch. It's just waiting for you guys. If you don't go to sleep, it's going to catch you. And she had them good. Until the next day is when she decided to do it again and decided to tell them, no, y'all stupid. You don't see the wind blowing. You don't see his leaves. But it's a condition of the mind. Then she sat down and explained to them what it was. So that's how I got the explanation. After that, hey, I know it's a folk tale.
Yes. Okay. All right. So, but Uncle Augie, I told you that I actually saw the blood on the sheet and stuff. So do you think that even though your aunt said, listen, man, it's just a tree, just the leaves on the tree,
I would have to say that I firmly believe that if you believe in good, you gotta believe in bad. If you believe in God, you gotta believe there's a second power to it.
Okay.
You cannot be good without evil, or else you have nothing to compare it to.
All right. Okay, Pastor. I know you grew up in the village down there that had nothing happening there. You can't tell me no lie. And you're a pastor too. So you have to tell me the truth.
Yeah, well, obviously, I don't want to be charged with defamation of village. So I'm not gonna. But I mean, if you're from Guyana, I guess everybody knows where I grew up and the general region. Well, stories were very rife. I mean, in that village. As a matter of fact, right up the road, it was alleged that there was a Ole Higues living, and there were certain evidences that you had to look for. If it was alleged that someone was a Ole Higues, you had to look for certain evidence. And one of the most outstanding evidence was that the eyes were always red. When we say red, you understand me. I'm talking village talk now. So it was always very, very sort of full and kind of bloodshot kind of thing. So my grandmother said that's one of the evidences, because the person didn't get to sleep the night, because all night they were flying around sucking babies. And then there was this allegation as well that if you actually enter their home, they had to vomit because the blood that they sucked the night was so much. They had to store the blood somewhere. The best place to store the blood was in a long boots. In England, we call it a Wellingtons, but Guyana, it's a long boot. So they had to vomit the blood into the long boots. And that's where they store it for drinking later or whatever they did, because it was like an overdose, because they sucked so many babies. And then there was also that you had to look for them, and they always had a special broom as well that they would use. And if you enter the house, you will see that there's this broom that is not used for any other purpose but for flying. So this broom, would not be the broom that you use to sweep the floor. It will be a special broom, and it's always behind the door, and so on. So and so when you saw these kind of people coming with these red eyes and whatever, usually as kids growing up, you kind of you fled, you run from them, you run and you hide, or even you're passing the house, you went on the other side of the road to ensure that you didn't dare. But then there was also some other stories, and we were in a gathering, in a Guyanese gathering, gaffing as we was. And one of my colleagues, gave a story, and he was very adamant that this thing had to be true, because he said he saw this, and he's not a man who would lie. I mean, he was pretty serious when he said this, that there was this lady who was living in the area, and she actually was considered to be a Ole Higues, and they had this baby in the house. It was a newborn baby in the house, and about midnight. Now these things always happen around midnight.
Yes.
Well, it was around midnight that they heard the scratching, but they had done some of the protection that we talk about. They had the rice and all of that stuff across the door and everything else, and they all this scratching by the door. And back in those days, there was not a lot of there was actually electricity was like, it was basically lamps and so you use. So the villages and so on were very dark, back in those days. And I think that as well lent to a lot of sort of evil things happening.
Yes, definitely.
They like, and so when they heard this scratching, the man of the house, he was present there, the one who was telling the story, that the man of the house pulled a cutlass and said, it must be the Ole Higues out there. And when they opened the door, there was this lady actually counting the rice. And the guy went to actually, to chop her. But the occupants of the house said, no, don't do that, and so on. And she looked up, and then when she looked up and everyone saw her and so on, she fled from the scene. And so he was saying that this was something that as a young man, as a young boy, he saw, and he could verify because he was there in that house.
When she was counting the rice?
When this whole incident happened.
Wow.
And the door was open and the light, the torchlight was shone upon her, and then she looked up, and indeed her eyes were red. Like we were told when we were little boys, that if these people have these kind of bloodshot eyes, that was something that he did. And he was pretty adamant that he saw it. And that's why I'm saying, he's not somebody that, I will doubt. I mean, he said he saw this thing in action, actually.
Yeah.
And around the area, there were always cries from parents that they were kind of like lip marks on their kids and all of that stuff. And until this lady was actually caught, sort of in the very act counting this rice and so on, that's when they were able to identify
who it was. Yes.
Actually doing this stuff. And of course the person, then having been found out, I think they moved from the village. So that's where it is in terms of my experience of hearing these things and growing up in a sort of a context where a lot of these stories were told. Some of them you could have verified, others you could not. It was somewhere folklore and so on.
Okay, all right. But I actually have before we go to the next segment, before we really delve in, my mother had a story, and I'm going to just quickly tell it. It happened with my brother. All right, and he was sick after he was christened, and she thought it was something that somebody probably held him wrong or something. But he refused to take the bottle, refused to take the breast or anything, and she took him to several doctors, maybe like 3, and nothing worked, right? And then somebody told her to maybe he needs to be maybe it's hastily, so something where if you don't hold it baby properly, the arm goes out. I don't know.
Yes, a strain on the
right. So maybe and then she took him, and somebody anointed him for that, and then somebody bought him, because the Indian lady said that he needs to be bought when he's to own the boy or something. Bought him for a penny, and then she did something jarre, I know a lot of you might have heard it before, somebody being jarred, all right? But then,
You know what the process of that jarring is. I mean, I can tell you practically what they do. Do you want to
it's,
hear that?
it's, it's like an oil, the oil in.
No, no, no. It's not. It's not an oil.
Okay.
You want to hear? You want to hear what it is? What they do?
Yes, yes, I'm going to tell you. You're going to tell me after. So she did this thing and nothing happened. Anyway, she had dreamt that after he wasn't getting better, she dreamt that she saw a woman in the kitchen with his dress on, and when she pushed the person turned into a dog. And then when she woke up and tell the others in the house, they said, "I'm telling you, somebody's troubling this child." Right? And then she took him to Mama Fifi, who said they didn't stuck him, but they mashed him. All right? And she
Is
proceeded
there
to,
a Mama Fifi in every country, in every island, that kind of thing?
right? So she had to so she did something with him. She tied it, so she was going to tie him, where to put something on the forehead, and then the right to the left and the left to the right, and then she said him that she can't bathe him. It's too late. Take him back before sunrise the following morning. And she gave him a bath with blue water with an egg inside. And so after you're laughing, after this was done though, when she got home, the child took the breast and bottle. I'm telling you, the boy was never sick. My mother told me that story, her own experience. I believe the woman. Stay tuned. In fact, Pastor, yes, tell us about the jar, and then we'll take a break and come back.
Yeah, I mean, these stories. Yeah, so the jare, basically what they do, they get this incense. It's a sweet smelling, like product you buy to the drugstores, incense.
Okay.
And then they have garlic skins and
right, onion skin and something else.
Stuff. And then they hold this thing up in front of the person, and then they make the sign of the cross, and they go down to their feet, and they go up to their head, and they chant some kind of thing, or say a prayer or some kind of thing, and then that's what happens. And then they also, as a process of that, they will take what we call a black pot, the bottom of the pot, and they will, because we cook from the wood fire side back in those days, and then they will put a black mark on the forehead. So
Okay.
they take a matchstick and they would scrape it to the bottom of the pot, because you cook from the wood fire, and they would put that there, and they say that there would prevent bad eye. So and would also ward off spirits. Those kind of things. I mean, I myself was sold for 25 cents, so I know I'm talking.
There you are so bad. There you go. All right, stay tuned, guys. Listen, invite your friend Karen. Don't say a word. Stay tuned. Keep your comments. We're coming back to you. Guys, this is hot. This is going to be good. Please, I implore you, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. Hit the notification bell right now so I can see you there on YouTube. I know some friends are there. I want you to click on the notification bell and click the subscribe button so that you can be notified whenever we go live. All right? I'm seeing a lot of people online. I wanted to double because I want you to go and share it with your friends and family, because they have a story to tell. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
All right. Good evening, all. It's another great evening. It's another Monday evening, and we're all at the Georgetown Tea House. Pastor, welcome aboard. Thank you again for making this sacrifice. You know, it's like 1:32 in good old London. So, you know, we're really, really happy that, you know, you're here. Tyrone, Augie, Cleon, what's up, guys? All
What's
right.
up? What's up?
All right. So we're talking about Ole Higues, which most of us know it's a Guyanese folk spirit. But more than a folk spirit, there have been people who have said that they've actually had encounters with the Ole High. Pastor, I will go to you first. You spoke of a colleague, you know, who you say it's not someone, you know, who has a tendency to make up stories,
Yeah.
all right, or to tell you things just to draw, you know, just to draw your attention.
Mm.
And you would have heard Martha speak about her experience. Her mother, you know, both she and her mother.
Mm.
As you listen, and as you would have listened to your colleague, and as you look back at your own childhood, growing up, what, you know, as you know, after having been years in the church, having been years as a pastor, what do you think is happening here? What is the phenomenon?
Yeah, well, based on my experience, what I've heard, what I've seen, you know, things people have spoken to me, they have told me over the years, it is a fact that evil is real, and evil people are real, and the people allow themselves to be used by the devil to do so many things. I mean, if you make yourself available to the devil, he will use you to do a myriad of things, and that will really and truly impact people's lives in a very different way. Of course, I know at some point in the show we will go to the biblical explanations for these things. But in answer to your question, in this first period, is that evil is real, and if people don't believe that evil is real, then something must be wrong, you know, with their perceptions, with their thinking. Because the truth is, yes, there were some people who stretched their imaginations for some of these stories, but there are others who have had first-hand encounter with those powers, and you can't doubt those stories. These things, and these are not people. I mean, this colleague I'm talking about, you know, I mean, obviously today he's a minister and so on, but you know, these are not people who will just make up things. They're not people who don't, you know, who have mental issues or you know, would you say, well, they're just a figment of the imagination. These are real issues, and seeing firsthand what has happened to their children, and etc. And like I said, you know, back in those days, I mean, probably you don't really hear a lot of this stuff now, but back in those days, it was a dark time. It was a dark time in the sense that the environment was dark. There was no, you know, street lights. It was non-existent. Lots of people lived with flambeaux as they light, you know, candles. You know, did your homework. You know, there was so many blockouts, and people did their homework with flambeaux. And when you were finished the next morning, you try to wipe it by your nose. There's a whole sort of soot there and all kinds of things. It was a dark time, and once there is darkness, evil strives, right? And that darkness could be physical darkness as well as, of course, spiritual darkness as well, and evil. Yeah. So yes, as far-fetched as some of these stories might be,
right?
For the people who have experienced them, it was real.
Okay. All right. All right. Good. Tyrone Pastor makes mention of the fact that a lot of these stories came out of the time, when there was a lot of darkness in terms of actual physical darkness in villages and so on. How much you think that played into the stories that would have come out? The fact that at that time there was it was your flambeau, it was your kerosene lamp, etc. How much of that? And because these days, and I think somebody mentioned that in the chat, these days you don't hear too many of these kinds of stories. So how do you think the whole thing about darkness factored in, Tyrone?
I think in agreement with what Pastor said, the darkness played a major role in the manifestation of these evils, because evil strive in darkness. Another thing you used to hear a lot is about Baku, and we don't hear about Baku now, because I think the light, because for an Oleg to thrive, to fly in the night, it must be in darkness. Most time they don't fly during the day. It's at night at 12, the darkest hours of the night. That's the time that they do their stuff. Because, and I will put it this way: the evil one is a man of darkness, so to speak. He's a man who will do all his stuff in darkness. And I can give my experience in terms of the darkness part of it, not in terms of the light part of it.
Mm-hmm.
There were a period of time when I was writing St. Lucia here, when I find that once I sleep with the lights off, that certain things used to happen. And when I stay with the lights on, then it never happened. So there has to be something with darkness, physical darkness, and how evil operates in physical darkness. There has to be some truth to the statement.
Okay, thank you. Cleon, we're still on the subject of darkness and the appearance of this phenomenon. How much do you think, growing up, if you're in a bedroom and it's a candle light in the bedroom, sometimes the curtain can take on the shape of somebody, or you might have somebody might have a little dolly in the corner, all right? And when that candlelight shines, that dolly, becomes a fearsome character. How much do you think it was that something was actually happening, and how much was it, the darkness just playing tricks on it?
Like Tyrone and Dr. Thomas would have said, and yourself actually also, darkness did play a lot in what transpired back then. Like I said, I have never had any personal encounters because the Lord probably know that my heart is not good enough to deal with that. So I didn't get the experience. However, I can't say I've never allowed it from the psychological aspect of how it affects you as an individual to thinking that, oh, if I have to, because where my grandmother lived was a few houses away from the burial ground. And if anybody knows better for acting, you have to pass the cemetery to get to the scheme. And if you were coming from way down in the back, you have to pass cemetery 1 and then cemetery 2. So you know, thinking about all of these things that were going on, that people were saying is real. And even though you are in primary school and you're trying to have a sense of reasoning, is this making sense? Or are they trying to tell us these things because they're trying to scare us in that kind of a way? Because I always try to think a different way from what people would have said to me. But the reality is the fear on the inside of you because of the darkness has played significant roles. For me, I don't like to sleep with the lights because if it's dark, boom, I gone to sleep. No time. The light is on, it's difficult for me to go to sleep. But I have had those experiences where you're sitting and you'll be like, is it somebody in the window? Then you'll be like, you that stupid to believe that somebody's going to be standing in the window? And then when you got a little older and you become more into church, you rebuke the devil. And then if you see something pass, if you just came from a funeral, again, and you see something pass or you smell something like one of the fragrance that was at the funeral, they used to say all of these horrible things that I can't repeat that my mother used to say, really bad things about the dead person. And in my mind and in my heart, I do believe it was just a figment of our imagination based on the fact that it is scary and it is something that we are not so sure 100% unless we would have had that encounter. Like I say, I'm not going to discredit anybody's belief that they never had those encounters. I do believe that those things do exist, but it's just that it's not in my catchment of my journey of life to experience. And I give God praise for that. Amen.
Augie, you were talking earlier, but it seemed that your parents, your grandparents, they use it essentially as a scare tactic, to get you kids in line, right? So as you listen to the conversation so far, would you say that maybe your mom and grandmother, they basically were people who just didn't believe this thing. They were skeptics.
Well, even though my grandmother did come and say, okay, well, it was scare tactics, I did speak to some friends and some relatives who actually, when they spoke about it and they told you their stories, I mean, these guys would literally break out in sweat, just beads of sweat while they're talking. So if you're going to have that kind of reaction, yeah, I'm kind of tending to believe you. But then at the same time, I do have my father's blood where he didn't believe it. But Cleon, where you lived, he would never live. We were going to purchase a house at one time and everything was good. The price was good, everything was beautiful. Right before we closed the sale, my father looked through the back window and saw the graveyard. We couldn't buy that house. Just because he could see it. That was it. The deal was closed. But he wasn't scared, but he's always better safe than sorry. That was his view.
He had a fear.
Yeah.
He's dad. Dad ain't gonna tell us that.
Genuinely had a fear.
Yeah. I wanted to come in here.
Go ahead, Pastor.
Yeah, brother Nancy. I wanted to come in here to just touch a bit on the whole fear and the culture of fear. Now, someone asks, what happened to all you Ole Higues now? In the chat, and I think that response to that would be that it is not that evil people are not there now in terms of people allowing themselves to be used by the devil, but I think that the era in which we live, people operate in a different way. The devil operates in a different way. The devil adjusts his tactics to suit whatever era, whatever time we live. We grew up in a culture sort of fear of the unknown, there was always this thing about death and spirits and all of that. For example, if you pass the burial ground, I think you couldn't point there because your finger would be rotten off,
Mine are still
or,
here.
or you have to, yeah, or you have
You
to,
have to bite them.
yeah, bite them, or
Yeah.
So there was always something tied to something, and if there was a funeral procession passing outside and anybody in the house was sleeping, you had to wake them up. If you had baby clothes on the line,
You
you
have to
had
pick it
to
up.
pick it up and so on. So I think that part of that narrative played into our suspicions, our belief systems as well. And so, even though lots of the stories that people told were real in terms of their encounter with it, I think that aspect of fear added something more to that narrative that sort of carried it on into like a culture, a tradition, something that really impacted not only one generation, but impacted generations. And so you will find that even today, people who actually came up in a certain generation when all of these things were rife, they would advise their children now as to what to do if certain things happen, like whether that's sea bat with the blue or jarry someone with an egg and all of this stuff. There are still families and traditions that these things are handed down to even today. And even though the devil is operating in a different way, yet people still kind of cling to so I would say that the culture of fear and superstition and so on that we grew up in as well added to some of the drama of those days.
Okay. Pastor, you bring up a point that I'm gonna get back to in a while. And you talk about death, and like we know, death is that one thing that we human beings, we generally can't seem to get a grip of it, right? And we know that some superstition does have to do with our fear or discomfort or whatever with the whole issue of that, right? So I'll come back to you with that. What I want to deal with, I will start with you, Cleon. As a Christian person, does superstition in any way, shape, or form factor into your existence? Have you ever found it coming into your life in any way?
Superstition.
Yeah. Do you have to travel on certain days? Do you eat with a certain spoon? Do you have any of these superstitions?
I do not, because of the defiant person I am in the righteous way. And somebody might ask me, how can you use defiant and righteousness at the same time? Well, I just did. The culture, like Pastor rightly said, there are things that my generation would have said, and I'll use this good example. So my mother lives in Anguilla, which is a small island just off the coast of St. Martin's. And she came back to Guyana, and both of my grandmothers were into the spiritual world type of belief. God rest their souls, they're all dead now. So they can't do anything about that. And no family won't be coming for me either, because it's already out there. And so my mother came back and she wanted to have this service. And the person came and they had to have 7 persons to pray. Why the number 7? I don't know. Remember, I'm a young Christian. I just don't understand why they have to have this tie-up head and the drumming and the candles and all of these mitchy-matchy thing that is just kind of stressful in my opinion. And then you're going to ask me to do the last prayer. And so this was my prayer. Lord, you said to Disobedience is as the sin of witchcraft, and if we're not obedient to you, then we can't expect to get anything. Amen. Long story short, my mother is not in the tie head candlelight service people spirit business anymore. Funny enough, my aunt decided that she was going to have one of the, and a lady was saying to me in the service, she even told me about a lady from Bedford acting who did those kind of spiritist thing. And she said, I am running from my calling. So I said, running from a calling? What kind of calling is that, my girl? And so she went on and they did all of these things. And all I did while I was there, I said, Blood Jesus is against winner. Honor ain't gonna conquer me today. Because I am believing this. Even though I have seen it from childhood growing up into teenager, into adulthood. I still did not believe it because to me, it just did not make any sense. Why would you have me running around a table, sweating over the food that I had to cook and all of these things, to you to just tell me, oh, open the book and whatever you open the Bible to, that is what the Lord trying to tell you. So those things that I would have seen, in my opinion, from the person who should not have a logical understanding, I thank God for the little wisdom that I had from since then. That didn't make sense. So now someone trying to say to me, oh, put a glass of water over the door. When my grandmother moved out of the house that she had, that we moved into, I took the glass down from over the door. I said, why are you going to put a whole glass over the door and we don't even have no glass to drink water out of? That making any sense? So for me, none of those superstition things I hold on to, not even the one where they say, if you're coming in after 12, you must turn your back. Or even if you go to the funeral, strip outside in the yard, take off all your clothes because you don't want to bring the spirits in. I said, but that don't make no sense. You can't see the spirit, so why should I be stripping outside for people think that I'm running crazy? So for me, Tyrone, none of those things I go by. And my family who knows me know that they can't get me to do that, period. You can pay me $1 million, ain't gonna work. I will take the money, but ain't gonna work.
Thank you so much. Augie, how are you on the superstitions end? You know, do you find that you have superstitions, whether naturally or otherwise?
I would kindly say no, but I would tell you true story. So my father loved music. Loved music. That was his thing. Never played an instrument, but he just loved music. So he was telling me a story of him one day, he heard his music, he heard these drums, and he's following the music, and he goes and he goes and he goes. Eventually, he sees this big crowd and whatever they're doing, and the beat has just got him there, and he's going. Before he knows it, he's close by the fence, and he gets a chance to peek over, and he sees them doing the service. And somebody made a mistake and threw rice, and the rice hit him. Well, he was gone. He said he was out of it for the next couple of days. He's any kind of thing that he's seeing, he stayed away from rice because he thought that there's some sort of spirit or whatever. So he told us that story, and it sat well with us. It was a good laugh, and so on and so forth. So we fast forward it to life in America, and my brother's family now, they invited me to a service to play the keyboard. So I come there with my keyboard, and I'm set up in the corner. And me being a spiritual guy, I said, well, you know what? Y'all gonna go ahead with your service, but I'm gonna stay in this corner. Y'all do whatever you gotta do. I'm gonna play the songs, not a problem. Anyhow, long story short, they start and they do this thing where they're spinning somebody, and the person's spinning, and they say, wait, no. They're going too far. You gotta spin them the other way. So okay, I'm watching. And then they start to spin them the other way, and they're going through this thing, and whatever music they want me to play, I'm playing, and they're going and going and going. Somebody foot hit the bowl, and I see the rice hit the keyboard. Well, I was upstairs. That was it. True story. But it was instinct. It was instinct. So as much as I would like to say no, when the process actually comes, I'm gonna run.
But rice is beautiful, nevertheless.
When you're eating it,
Yeah.
You were hanging around to figure whether it making sense or not. You see
it
right.
was instinct. The foot hit the bowl, the rice hit the keyboard. I was upstairs. My brother says, "Hey, wait a minute. The service is over." I said, "No." He said, "What happened?" I said, "Rice hit the keyboard." He started to laugh.
um, Tyra, what about you? Any superstition on your end?
I would not say superstition. I know, and Dr. Thomas might be right on this one. When as guys together you watch cricket and you have a favorite batsman and he's making runs, he's staying in a certain position, and you say, you know what, don't move, especially when the game is tight. Stay in that position, don't move, because if you move, the person will out. I mean, that's just done. That's just done jokingly, but I've never had experiences like Cleon and Uncle
Augie.
Augie. But I remember once I was coming from a wake at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I know that it's dark. And when I got to my home, that was in Victoria, I saw a shadow flash across the gate. And I stopped and I started making noise. When I stepped back, it was my own shadow that flashed that flashed across the gate. And I'm saying to say this, I think the devil has a way of feeding the fear that's in you. He feeds the fear that's in you. I remember another time I was by Telford Lane. A group of us guys, we went by Telford Lane. They live on the road, on the public road. And you were watching a television movie. And the guy decided to watch a horror movie tonight. And so the movie ended at 1 o'clock. But when we were heading home, I had to go to Victoria Main Road, and the other guys now had to go around Belfield. So it was me alone now. As soon as I got by the health center, that's just by the cemetery, it was blackout.
Oh.
And all hell broke loose. I almost ran into a parked truck because I couldn't see anything. And it was just past. I mean, that was at younger days. But in terms of superstition now, no. Because I mean, I serve a God that tells us, do not be fearful of anything. He always says to us, fear not. And I think he knows that there are things that will cause fear, that has the potential to cause fear. So he says, fear not. I can give experience in where I used to live before. Whenever I leave the television on, I go into the bedroom and lie down. At night, the television will come on by itself. So I did an experiment. I put it on a gospel station. It was free ABN and then a TBN. And every time I put on a gospel station, it stayed on for the entire night. Whenever it was on another TV channel, that's not a gospel TV channel, it came off. Sometimes when I'm outside and I look at the television, it comes off when I fall asleep. But once I'm looking at it all the time, it's a gospel TV station, it will stay on. Again, to me, it's not superstition. And when I look at that thing and what was happening around that time, I was happening in that environment, I knew that there was something that was happening in there, which was real. And I can give a number of experiences that I've had in that same environment. So the evil is real, but God says to us, do not fear. Fear nothing.
That is so true.
But Tyrone, on that point, I mean, I'm listening to you. In your case, though, would it have been darkness that was interfering with whatever? Because you were saying that once gospel music is playing, it's allowed to play on, right? It's when the other music is being played that it would suddenly cut off. So would you say that's the devil at work?
I would say so. I would definitely, because of that and other experiences that I've had in the environment. I know that it was something that's supernatural. I knew it. And again, I'm saying based on other experiences that I've had in that environment, I know that it just couldn't be that the TV was on time off. TV, they have the time off on TV. And after a certain time, it cuts off and then it comes back on. Yeah. And maybe next week I'll give more experiences from that particular environment.
I like what Karen is saying, that your TV was a Christian.
That could be true, but even if I can share this one, Anansi, while I went to a Christian institution in Trinidad, and I have a friend who is a Haitian national who was at school with me, and there was this particular room. I stayed in that room in my first semester, and I stayed on campus by myself because obviously you don't have money to travel and go home. You'll have to stay on campus. And I have never experienced any of this phenomenon that persons who had stayed inside of that room and stories that were told of the individual that they see in that room. And the person came to me once and said, Cleon, why is the lady trying to hold me down inside of the room? I said, they have no lady inside of the room. It's probably just your imagination. And he was so adamant that the other guys who are on the hall with me said, yes, that's why nobody don't want to stay in that room. I said, but I stayed in that room for an entire year by myself, and I never saw anything. I stayed there for the Christmas by myself, and I never saw anything. I guess my spirit is a bit too stronger. So I decided, for me, when I don't understand something, and it's kind of weird, I play South African music, which I don't know what they're saying in their dialect. And I said, look, I really can't, I'm not going to stay in the room with you tonight to figure out if this thing is real. I have other things to do. I have work in the morning in the office, and I have classes to go to during the day. I'm going to put on this music, and if you do get to rest, let me know in the morning. Funny enough, he said he slept throughout the night, and when I went to look at what the meaning of the song that I actually played inside of the room for the night was dealing with how you would deal with like exorcism type of a thing, and I did not know that was what the song was actually dealing with. So I still continue to hold fast to my South African music. So big up Joyous Celebration and all the music that they produce. And persons will simply say to me, Cleon, why are you listening to the music and I don't even know what the people are saying? I say, well, sometimes when you don't know what you're dealing with, you got to find something that you don't know what you're dealing with to deal with that which you don't know how to deal with. I hand that over to you.
Thank you, Cleon. Yes, Pastor, we're going to look at what the Bible says about some of who we're talking about. But take us to now the issue of death. As a man of the cloth, you would have had to counsel many at that somber time. How much do you think our fear of, our discomfort with death, the unknown as to what actually really happens beyond, how much of that plays into some of the creations of the folk spirits or the things we see? How much of that do you think plays into all of that?
Yeah, well, I'll share. There are many stories I could share on that, but I came across a story which I'll share with you. It was an illustration of how people take death and how people understand death and how people's fear of death or superstition actually kicks into that. But before I get to that, let me just remind you guys that when we were growing up, that announcement in Guyana on the radio was at 9 o'clock. And I don't know if anybody could remember that. I mean, if you're my age or maybe a bit younger. And Guyana had one of the worst death announcement songs. This thing had a tune, something like da, 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 da. It's kind of like a weird, like this thing was coming from somewhere out of this world. And if your parents ask you, when is that announcement time? Everybody is together. That's the time the family is together. Everybody's in the living room listening. If your parents ask you to go in the bedroom to get something from the bedroom, that was like hell itself. Nobody wanted to go. You beg people to come with you. And again, it all came out of this sort of culture of fear of death, of the unknown. Let me tell you how. So I came across this this year as I was preparing for this program. Well, I actually have this. This is an illustration I give when I'm doing anything on death inside. I'll read it to you, and you know, and it says that a man, you know, checked into a hotel, and there was a computer in his room. So he decided to send a mail to his wife. He accidentally typed the wrong email address, and without realizing it, he sent the mail to a widow who had just returned from her husband's funeral. The widow decided to check her mail, expecting condolences, message of condolences from relatives and friends. After reading the first message, she fainted. Her son rushed into the room, found his mother on the floor, and saw the computer screen. And this is what it said. It said, "To my loving wife, I know you're surprised to hear from me. They have computers here, and we are allowed to send mails to loved ones. I've just been checked in. How are you and the kids? The place is really nice, but I'm lonely here. I have made necessary arrangements for your arrival tomorrow. I expected you. I can't wait to see you." So when the lady saw he sent the message to the wrong email address. So this lady, I just buried her husband, and so he's like, you know what, I'm good, you know. So and you see this sometimes at funerals, you know, people are crying, let me go with him. And then somebody, I remember once I was doing a burial, and somebody pushed from the back. This lady was crying. She wanted to go with her husband. And somebody, you know, the crowd surging forward a bit, and she slipped into the hole with the coffin. All tears went. She, "Come, take me out of here. You all crazy? Pull me out. And people had to be reaching down to trying to get her out of there, because, you know, obviously she wasn't serious about going with him. And when it comes to counseling people concerning death and so on, you have to take into consideration all the superstitious backgrounds that they have, because obviously we deal with people who believe in God and people who don't believe in God, right? We deal with people who come from these superstitious backgrounds about death, and we deal with people who don't even have any clue about death. I can remember when I came here to England, I had to do my driving test all over again, because, you know, the way we drive in the Caribbean and so on, you can't drive over in these parts. You have to do your driving license all over again. And so the white British guy who was teaching me to drive in England, his concern was what really happens to someone when they die. He was that, and while he's showing me the ropes of the road, the one question that we discussed every day until I finally passed my driving test was what really happens to someone when they die, because he was so concerned about that. He wanted to know whether they go to heaven, they go to hell, or if they were good, whatever happened. And I think that question, the mystery of death, is still one of the biggest questions that people have in their minds. It's unwritten, it's unspoken, but it's right there in their minds. Is this it? Is this life? Is this life it? And in our counsel and so on, we have to take people back, whether they believe or not. You have to take them back to Genesis, when God created man. And I explained to them that in Genesis, God creates man. So he forms man from the dust of the ground, and he shapes man. Man is shaped. But man is lying there and he's not alive. He's dead. He's still, right? Nothing happens. He's just there. Then God kneels down and he breathes into him the ruach, the Hebrew, the breath of life, the breath of God. And then Genesis says that man becomes a living soul. Genesis chapter 1. He becomes a living soul. He gets up. Genesis chapter 2. He stands up. He begins to walk. He begins to talk. And then when God was ready to make Eve, he puts man to sleep again. And he takes a rib and he forms Eve. And the procedure happens all over again. And so what happens when you die is creation in reverse. When you die, the breath goes back to God, the body goes to the ground, and there is nothing left that's flying around to frighten people or spirits, etc., etc., etc. Because when you're created, God makes you there, and he breathes into you the breath of life, you live. When that breath is taken away, then you are as before. And so I think that gives people an understanding of really what happens in death. And it also deals with the superstitions and the spirits and all of these things, because these things are actually, as Revelation says, they are the spirits of devils flying around doing stuff, doing miracles. They're not physical people. But the devil knows, because he's been there a long time. He has all the experience. He knows look, when my grandmother died, I can remember as a little boy, and little boy, you like to walk late. And so when I was coming home, the 2 nights after the funeral, by the time I hit the gate, I smelled the same perfume that they sprayed in her coffin while she was in the yard there. Man, I hit the door so hard, man. They wanted to know, what was happening to me out there. But that's the devil for you. He brings these things. He wants to get you. What the devil wants to do is to suck you into a life that gets you trapped, believing all kinds of stuff. And if he fills your mind with all of these things, then you don't have any space for God to operate and to guide your path into truth and into right living, etc. So people who are hooked like Leon, and I have that experience, so I could tell you for the whole year my stories of, growing up in a place and in think where this whole superstition thing is, and all the work you got to do and all the services and all different entries that got to be entertained. You got to dress like a Chinese, you got to dress like a Asian, Indian, you got to entertain, dance around, and food. And there's always a white fowl to be killed and a turkey to this and that. And the amount of money, financial resources that are poured out on these things, that poor families are kept in poverty, while these guys who do these things, these obeah men like Brinsley and all these chaps who used to be living in Buxton or wherever, get rich off of people playing on their superstitions. And if they understand truly what happens to someone when they die, because when we die, we wait. It's a sleep. We don't know anything. We die, we wait on God, on Christ to come and to resurrect us from the dead, those who have died in Christ. So that's the journey. And it's a very painful journey, Brother Nancy. It's a very painful journey that you have to take people through. And even some of our members who are, members, death, it's very strange how sometimes death can distort even people's faith and their belief. in God. And this is especially not, this is a very painful time. I mean, I have conducted about 37 funerals within the last year to this year. People have died from COVID, and there's another 5 funerals that's waiting me there. People have died from COVID. The heartbreak that you have to deal with, the pain, it distorts oftentimes how people perceive things, even people of faith. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for that, Pastor. All right, we're going to close off after a very short break with you dealing. We started off talking about the Ole Higues and about the different experiences. With you dealing with how the Bible speaks of these things, or if the Bible does really and truly speak of things like the Ole Higues, etc. All right, so we'll be back shortly.
All right. Listen, I was cracking up. As usual, when I'm off camera, I'm there I'm listening and I'm cracking up. Pastor, you had me cracking up in tears. Yes, Pastor. So give us a little insight as to what the Bible says about, Ole Higues, etc.
Yeah, I could start off, but I know that the other guys there are as knowledgeable, I'm sure, and will chip in. So I wouldn't give everything. I'll allow some of the guys to also talk. But just to say that, in Revelation chapter 16 and verse 14, it talks about the devil and his evil angels. Now, we know that there are a lot of evil angels. They were kicked out of heaven. And the story of Genesis is about chapter 3 is about the fall of man, where man decided to accept the devil's word over God's word. And then Adam and Eve sinned and all of that stuff happened. So Revelation 16:14 says that they are the spirits of devils working miracles. So these evil spirits and all of that people talk about, frightening them, taking over people to make them Ole Higues and all of this stuff, the Bakus, the this, the that, all of these things we see, they are actually manifestations of evil spirits and the devil and his evil angels, who are trying to deceive mankind and trying to get mankind in such a mental state that they don't have capacity to absorb and understand the truth of God, absorb and understand Jesus Christ, absorb and understand what the Bible has to say. Because if your life is wrapped up in superstition, if your life is wrapped up with all the things that the devil do, Halloween is coming up and all of these things and so on, then you really don't have the capacity. You reduce your capacity to accept Christ and absorb what he has to offer in terms of his salvation and his love for you.
Very, very true. What's your take, Tyrone? So much information. I know we'll continue this next week. And because we have some testimonies, we have some real life testimonies of somebody who as she told me, she said her pores are up. You all made mention earlier about some people talking to you about these stories and their pores are up, right? And she got some real horror stories to talk about. But Tyrone, have you read anything with regard to the Bible says about these things?
A lot of stuff that the Bible says, and I like to go back from the beginning. Once there's the God of love, there has to be the opposite, and the opposite is the enemy of God's kingdom. That's the evil one. And there's a text that I normally read in the Bible that stuck with me, and it says, when God spoke about the Amorites, it says the iniquity has not yet gotten to its fullest.
Hmm.
And when I think about that, I'm thinking that the enemy, the arch enemy, his evil ways has not yet reached to his fullest. And when that has gone to his fullest, I think that will be the end of him. And that's where the hope lies. Now, in terms of what the Bible says, I had an experience that sent me right back to Numbers chapter 23. Balak, because of the children of Israel's growth in economy, in numbers, in strength, he called Balaam and he said to Balaam, go and curse these people for me.
Hmm.
And had not God intervened, it would have happened, because the devil has that power to make things happen. And I've had a personal experience with such. And Pastor spoke about Halloween. I've had experience with an individual who was actually in my home, and they were so fearful of death because the next sacrifice of the Halloween was the person.
Hmm.
And I literally saw this person jump for joy when 12 o'clock passed that evening.
And he was still alive.
And he was still alive. And around 12, around 11:49, 11:59, I've never heard so many dogs bark around my ears yet.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
At that point in time, you heard dogs barking, dogs howling. And when the person recognized that at 12:05 they were still alive, this person literally jumped for joy. And as Pastor said, this thing here is a battle of the mind, because it is the mind that we make decisions for Christ. And if our mind is clouded, if our mind is bombarded by these things of fear and all the rest of it, there is little or no space to basically think about God, the things of God, and the power of God. I remember looking at the same person and trying to get the person to read Psalm 91 from the Bible.
Hmm.
And I literally saw this person's two eyes, one going this direction and the one go the other direction. And the eyes were fixed in these two corners. And they couldn't see a thing in the Bible after them. They couldn't read a word in the Bible after them. And then you heard the noise on the outside. You heard the scraping and so on, and the roof and the windows and so on. So these are experiences that I would have had personally. And that's why I know it's a battle of the mind. And I'll close my final statement would be this. I remember one afternoon I was on the radio program, Sabbath afternoon. I normally do a radio program every Sabbath afternoon called The Bible Speaks. And I dealt with the same issue of what we didn't agree with tonight. I dealt with that same issue. And from that time onward, I recognize that the enemy has sent out double his force. He has sent out double his force. And had it not been for God's protection and intervention, I might have been somewhere else. And as I told you, Marcel, it got so bad that my name was actually taken to their master. Have you ever seen these African movies where they have these names taken to their master and person seen on the screen? Right, name was actually taken to the master, and when I saw certain patterns of behavior from individuals and from things and so on, I recognized that I cannot afford to leave my home without covering myself under the blood of Christ.
Oh, wow.
I had to be covering tremendously under the blood of Christ. And so I'm saying, I agree with Pastor. It's a battle of the mind. And when my mind, when I said to people, almost 24 hours a day, my mind's on God. Some persons call me impressionist. Some person said I'm overdoing it. But I know exactly why my mind has to be on God and the things of God 24/7. If I don't, then I'll leave space for something else to take over.
Oh wow. Oh wow. All right. Thank you for that, Tyrone. Uncle Augie is smiling. I know we're about to close. Just give us a quick last minute thought on all that we've said. I mean, we're coming back next week and we're dealing with more of this, with regard to the impersonation, people who actually turned into different vegetables and that kind of thing. We're going deep next week again. So yeah.
Right. I mean, it is a fact that we are living in the last days. And as you will see, when a person is in a fight and you know you got like 1 minute left in this round, you're gonna give it your all because you know you've already lost the fight. So if you get knocked out, you don't care. So the least thing you could do is swing for the fences. Now, when it comes to Oleg and these other folklores or stories, then I strongly believe that it's a play upon the imagination. But I also am reminded in the Bible where it says that he will keep the imperfect peace whose mind is stayed on him. Jesus is the light. So, of course, in the darkness, a lot is going to happen. But if your mind is fixed on the light, you have no choice but to come out ahead of the game. So, when your mind is stayed on him, you have no choice but to succeed. And that's where our minds have got to be, as Tyrone just alluded to, all the time. The more that we can think, the more that we can put inside of our minds, is the less fear that we're actually going to get a chance to experience.
Cleon?
A whole lot that was said tonight, and like, as much as some person would think some things are funny, there is the serious side of it. And the fear of death indeed is one of the unknown things that persons are struggling with, whether you're in Christendom or outside of Christendom. And worse yet, if you're outside of Christendom, or even worse yet, when you're in Christendom and still trying to figure out what really happens after death. So that will be dealt with probably later on in another subsequent telecast.
Yes.
But Psalms 5:4 reminds us that for you are not a God who delights in wickedness, evil may not dwell in you. While fear has a lot to play on our minds, we have got to be cognizant of the fact that we have the ability, we have the power to speak to the one who has created us, that he will help us, that our minds be renewed and be transformed daily, so that when those time comes, that we will not be fearful, even though we may be going through the valleys of the shadow of death experiences. And to have that confidence and that hope and that trust that he is with us. And again, like we said in a few weeks ago, because he is with us, we have to choose to believe that he is with us, even though we can't see him. Just like we may not necessarily be able to see these beings that are truly existing in this world, that we don't be ignorant of these things that are happening and leave ourselves open to such things to come and tamper with our lives, because there are persons who, like
You see, it got to be the devil. You see, he was saying something. Got to be, and he just went. He just got caught. Pastor, I'm going to let you have the final say.
Yes, and I think we will obviously delve a little deeper next week.
Next week, yes, definitely.
But just to say finally that, you see, all of this is predicated on the lie that the devil told Eve. And in that lie, he said in Genesis, so yeah, I had it here. Yeah, so in Genesis, he says to Eve in Genesis chapter 3, says, "You actually shall not surely die." You know, if you eat of this fruit, you know, you will be fine. You will not die. So that's Genesis chapter 3 and verse 4. He says, "You will not surely die," meaning that Jesus Christ, God said, if you eat of the fruit, you will die. The devil says, "No, eat and you shall not surely die." So what that is telling mankind, based upon the lie the devil has given to us, is that, look, even when you're dead, you're not really dead. You can still do things. You can still affect life. You can still do it, because the devil said, "You shall surely die." And one spiritist writing said that in that, the devil spoke the truth and God spoke a lie.
Yes.
So we will need to explore that later. But just to let you know that all of this stuff, all this superstition, all these things, it is predicated on that lie. You shall not surely die.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Cleon, they cut you off. They just bounce you. They just let you go.
I think
let you go again.
He did that to himself, man.
I figured something went wrong, so I continued talking like you do when you're on live radio. You never stop talking until you get back in.
Right. But thank you so much, guys. We will continue. We continue this next week. We got stories upon stories, testimonies, life testimonies. All right. So, guys, thank you so much, Pastor. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tyrone, Augie, and Cleon. You know, I can't do this without you. We can't do this without you. The Tea House folks love you. Our pastor takes time out morning, and it's his place, his country, you know, to be with us. So thank you so much, all you beautiful people, my friends, my family on this chat, you in YouTube. Kindly subscribe when you're there. If you're on YouTube and you're in the Georgetown Tea House page, click the like button there for us. Let us know that you're there, and we hit you up and, you know, make contact with you and the like. Thank you so very much for all you do, all you share with us every Monday night. It's always such a joy to be with you. So thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of the week. We truly love you.
Examine any profound event in the Bible or in the history of Christianity, and one is sure to recognize the consistently pivotal role of conversational interactions. We see this at play in Genesis, the first book, where through a series of conversations we witness the fall of our species and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. The conversation between God and man, the conversation between man and woman, the conversation between the woman and the devil, and so on. At the Georgetown Tea House, we know the great importance and pivotal role that conversations often play in our lives on this earth. And thus, we will seek to engage in the